Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to our meeting this evening. I will start our open session by, first of all, welcoming our newest counselor, Dave Morrow.
Hey.
Welcome back to the table, Dave. Looking forward to working with you.
Looking forward to it, thanks. Right.
And then I'll ask for approval of tonight's agenda. Any additions or deletions? Are there any disclosure of interest this evening? So at this time, I will recess council to begin our public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendment.
Could you speak a little louder, or else put it on because I cannot hear you.
I'm afraid of that. Okay, sorry, Ted, I shall try and, is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So this is a public meeting with respect to the consideration of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 of the Planning Act to amend bylaw 20-2014 as amended. This bylaw amendment affects all private lands in the Township of Schreiber. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to add provisions to the Schreiber Township zoning bylaw to address Canada Bill C-45, an act respecting cannabis. It is the intent of the zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit licensed medical marijuana facility and licensed cannabis production facility uses in all zones except as otherwise permitted through a zoning bylaw amendment. It is also the intent that no person, other than a person who is authorized to do so in accordance with Part 2 of the Cannabis Regulations under the Cannabis Act and the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, shall make use of any residential premises, indoors or outdoors, including accessory secondary dwellings, units, or apartments, for the growing of more than 4 cannabis plants.
Notice of this public meeting was posted on the municipal website on February 4th, 2020. Notice was also published in the Terrace-Bay Schreiber newspaper on February 4th, 2020.
In terms of procedure, we will first hear from the clerk any submissions received in writing, then we will hear from those in support of the bylaw, and then those opposed to the bylaw. All persons wishing to address the bylaw will please direct their questions through the chair, which is me.
Is the decision going to be made tonight by the few people here and the council, or is it going to be let a referendum for the rest of the town to decide? Because this is against my civil rights and against my human rights, and I'm not going to stand by and let you roll over top of me.
Could I continue on, please, Ted?
You can go ahead.
That. Any person who wants further notice of the passage of this bylaw should give their full name, address, and postal code to the clerk prior to leaving the meeting. Number 1, a copy of the bylaw was circulated. Is there anyone who does not understand it and wants an explanation?
I just answer the question.
Yeah, I'd like one also.
So I'll start with those first. I'm just going to go through a few details of, again, this bylaw amendment and make it clear so everyone understands exactly how it will impact, and possibly a few questions that you may have, especially with regards to personal growing or indoor growing. So what is the context and relevance of this bylaw? Bill C-45 allowed Canadians to purchase and consume cannabis. People could now carry up to 30 grams of cannabis or cultivate a total of 4 plants per household. This bylaw amendment is relevant to update Schreiber's zoning bylaw due to the changes in land use due to Canada's Cannabis Act C-45 and Ontario's Bill 36 and the Cannabis Statute Law Amendment Act 2018. Why is this bylaw necessary? In terms of the existing process, Cannabis growing operations require federal approval. The federal government will check for zoning conformity and site plan approval before granting any permits for cannabis growing facilities. In Schreiber, cannabis growing facilities can locate anywhere in rural zones as commercial greenhouses. Thus, at this point, Schreiber's ratepayers have no say in greenhouse applications on lands adjacent to them if those lands are zoned rural. Municipalities, including Pelham, Clearwater, and Erin, decided to allow cannabis production operations to locate in their rural zones as permitted commercial greenhouses, requiring no public meetings or zoning. Though site plan agreements controlled the layout and security of such operations, many neighbors were bothered by objectionable odors despite the filtration of fumes from the facilities. Apparently, some strains smelled like rotting meat no matter how well the vents were filtered. This bylaw amendment therefore gives full transparency, review, and appeal for ratepayers with regard to the location and development of cannabis production facilities. Does this bylaw affect retail sales? No. Schreiber opted in for cannabis retail sales for Ford's Bill 36. By opting in, Schreiber has no legal power to permit or prohibit the retail commercial sale of cannabis products. Any new cannabis sale outlets in Schreiber will be controlled and administered by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. Schreiber and its residents would be able to make written submissions within 15 days of notice posted for new cannabis retail stores. But the AGCO reserves exclusive rights and makes final decisions. Now, the question that a lot of you are probably here tonight trying to look into, does this bylaw amendment prohibit the production of cannabis for persons with medical permits or licenses or residents growing 4 plants at home? So the answer is no. This bylaw amendment states that no person other than a person who is authorized to do so in accordance with Part 2 of the Cannabis Regulations under the Cannabis Act and the Controlled Drug Substances Act shall use any residential premises indoors or outdoors, including secondary dwellings, units, or apartments for the growing of more than 4 cannabis plants. As per the above, local residents who home-grow cannabis will fall under the exception, and I quote, other than a person who is authorized to do so, end quote, exemption for personal medical use. And as per above, all residents of Schreiber will continue to enjoy their 4 cannabis plants.
You people all make me sick.
The township does not have the resources nor the interest to peek through everyone's backyards and windows. Such actions would seriously affect the privacy and quality of life for our residents. In the circumstance where someone does decide to illegally grow more than 4 plants in their house without a medical license, this will be a matter for police to deal with, not the township.
So are we open for questions now?
Not at this
Okay,
moment.
just let
We will now hear written submissions from the clerk.
I received 2 written submissions, one from Mr. Jean-Pierre Scaff, who would like to make a written submission towards the corporation of the Township of Schreiber, as he opposes the bylaw to end cannabis production in the Township of Schreiber. He has a permit to produce medical cannabis, and Ontario residents are permitted to grow 4 plants per house for recreational uses. And I have another written objection from a Dennis Carrier, saying, just so that this is on record, I, Dennis Carrier, am totally against this marijuana zoning bylaw proposal amendment under Section 34 of the Planning Act to amend bylaw number 2014. That's all the written objections.
Okay.
Am I correct in stating that this zoning proposal is strictly in regards to a commercial operation?
Yes, it is. Strictly commercial.
Has nothing to do with household,
No,
whatever you're allowed to do
that's right.
at this point in time?
Has nothing to do with personal growth.
Correct,
Strictly commercial.
yeah.
So the next question we have to ask is there anyone here in support of the bylaw amendment? And number 4, is there anyone here opposed to the bylaw amendment? Okay. Dennis, you were the first to put your hand up.
Saying this?
So, what bothers me, first of all, is I need to know what put you up to this? Why are you trying to push this through? I mean, if you were to leave it to the police, why not just leave things as they are right now? There's a lot of problem when it comes to the medical marijuana. What's happened is that a lot of people are after the male plant. The male plant is the one that produces the CBD. And you got to grow a lot of them in order to extract enough of the CBD in order to get enough of an effect. So what they've been doing is they would get other people to grow it for them, because you have to separate the females from the males. If you don't do that, what happens is the males pollinate the females, and then there is none of your dynamite buds. Your plant just simply goes to seed. So what would happen is those that had the medical licenses, they would grow at their house, but they would also get other peoples who could grow a lot more for them to produce the male plants, you see. So, and it's not, 4 or 6 plants. I'm talking about hundreds. Now, if you were to take the male plant, what they would do is they would wait till the male plant pollinated, so it makes little pods, and right after it pollinates, they would trim all the leaves off. And you literally eat it as a salad. And the reason why you do it that way is because as the male plant gets older and older, the leaves are not so tasty. There's no tenderness anymore in the leaves. Now, the older the male plant gets, the more CBD you will get out of it. But just to ingest the leaves that way, you really want the young, tender plants. So I'm talking about hundreds. They would grow hundreds of them. And they would be consuming the leaves that way. Now, for those that would allow the plants to fully mature, then that's where the tinctures come from. They would make their own tinctures from it. And then you'd end up with a much more powerful CBD oil or extracts from it. So with this amendment that you're trying to push through, what I see is why. I have to ask the reason why, when council already has zoning powers. And when I've seen how the township has acted before, it just seems that they were, all open arms when it came to storing nuclear waste. And then it came to time for our the iron ore transfer facility that was creating all of this dust and spewing all of this toxic waste that's full of heavy metals. I'm sure that if you were to take a sample of the groundwater over there, it would be terrible. I mean, not that having Micah's fuels and anything would have bettered it, but I mean, here we are just adding to it. So it just seems when it comes to something as toxic as that, Schreiber has always had open arms to that. Yet when you get something as benign as the cannabis plant, and that too, when you say the word cannabis, you're attacking the whole species here. You're attacking industrial hemp. You're attacking and there's lots that can be made from this. Anything from lip balm to shampoos. There's over 10,000 products that can be made from this. So I'm looking at you. So here you are. You're ready to hammer the door shut. By pushing this stuff forward, where really we should be open arms. We should be welcoming this for industry and for everything else. When it comes to the smell, I've driven by cannabis farms, large ones. The whole farm is bigger than all of Schreiber, and I didn't smell anything. Now, it could have been maybe the wind was blowing the wrong way. I can't see that because it was on both sides of the highway. But I mean, I didn't smell anything. I didn't smell anything offensive. So I don't know where the smell is coming from. Rotting meat. I've never even heard of that before. So there's my, that's my 2 cents.
I'd like to ask a question. Now, I own 2 large pieces of property. Now, who's gonna search that property to see if I'm growing marijuana or not?
No
Won't be
one.
us.
Who's gonna search it?
It won't be us.
It won't be us.
Well, what's the big bitch about this meeting then? Why, if you're not gonna search it, what are you gonna do? Let me grow 1,000 plants?
You know, like, are yous after seizing property now? Like, what are yous after? What's the end? What's the end here? I mean, I gotta take this at face value, and when I read this letter, nowhere in this letter, you're posting here, do you have the words industrial or commercial? Nowhere in this letter. You just say, you all come up, to prohibit the production of cannabis anywhere in Schreiber, and you ended it there. You didn't say commercial, you didn't say industrial. It's like you're trying to slam the door on all of these like, here we go, we're fighting this war all over again. That's how I feel.
And what the letter does say is if you have any further questions that, you know, you do direct it to me, and I did respond to
Right, but
your
I mean,
concerns,
who's to
right?
say I could throw the questions at you and then you turn around and do it anyway? You know? Or who's to say that, like, I mean, if I didn't come here and voice at all my discontent here, the person or public body is not entitled to an appeal decision. So if I didn't even come, I got wind of this Friday night at 10 o'clock. So I had 3 days, to prepare. You know, my sister here, she got some Terrace-Based Schreiber News. She says the last 2 newspapers, it was not posted in the paper. So that's two full weeks before I got wind of anything, of this meeting. You know, so to me, it just sounds like, you know, conniving. You're trying to slip this under the rug.
Absolutely. Look, we're not absolutely not. We're trying to slip anything under the rug for anyone
Sure
or
are.
anything like that. Schreiber is what Schreiber has in the past. When you look at again, when we were looking for retail outlets, we opted into it because we do see marijuana as an economic opportunity.
So where are we with that then? Where is it going to be? Where are you going to put it?
As long as we don't grow it, you're open, is what you're saying.
No, we would
If I
certainly.
wanna
if
grow
someone-
lip balm, you're telling me I can't.
No, that isn't what it's saying. It's basically saying that in terms of zoning, you just need to have to go through a zoning amendment process, just so in the
Listen,
case of
sick
any
people don't have
residents.
time to go through all this
Yeah,
kind of crap.
so why
You
do
can
we
be
need
in
an
your big
amendment
ivory
on
tower
an
sitting up
amendment?
there and tell people what to do, but you don't have the right to do that. You're just an idiot. And I'll tell you another thing, I'm ashamed of a few of the councillors on the council.
I'll say.
I'm very ashamed of a couple of them for going along with this crap.
So it's my understanding this whole amendment is about odor?
No.
What's it about then?
Seizing people's property? Is that what you're after?
You told me your reason was odor from somebody else's township.
That was an example. What we want to do is if some commercial person wants to come in and set up a commercial
Greenhouse or whatever.
greenhouse, welcome. Come in and do it.
Well, why don't
We
you
wanna
say that
do
instead
what-
of hiding this
But
tricky
why
little
are we
letter?
talking
Can you let me
That says
finish,
nothing.
please?
That says nothing.
I let you finish, would you let me finish, please? We welcome any commercial that would like to come into our community
say it.
and do that. I just said it. Welcome.
When you,
But what we want to do is control where they're going to put it. Just because you have no disagreement with it, doesn't mean somebody else doesn't want it right next door to them.
well, it seems to me that you
Those
make
bylaws are in
your
effect.
deals, a
No, they're
special
not.
deal for some people. You amend the bylaws for some people, you don't amend the bylaws for other people. I got a sample of that from you, your council.
And I'm not going to argue that point here tonight because that's not what we're here for.
Well,
We're
that
here to
just
talk
shows,
about
it
the
just shows what
amendment
your
to the
council is like.
cannabis.
It shows what your council is like. That's what it shows.
If this
Yes, it does.
rhetoric keeps up, I will cancel the meeting right now.
Well, cancel it then. Who gives a shit? You're just trying to railroad this through us.
Daddy, when this,
No, we're not.
when this council first started last year, one of the first things that we did was opt into the Ford bill there. We want somebody to come in and manufacture. We want that. We didn't say, hang on, we didn't say no to it. We said yes to it. And if you see a copy of the bylaw, it says licensed medical marijuana facility or licensed cannabis production facility. It says you can, and it also says that you can have your 4 recreational pot plants, cannabis plants. You can also, if you have, I'm not quite sure, your medical license or doctor's slip or whatever, you can grow that too.
I can grow
wherever.
that, but the doctors just don't like to sign those. forms.
Well, I mean,
So
we're-
I'm tired of dealing with them. I deal with Ted here, that's it.
That has
Okay,
nothing
but
to do with
That's
us,
the way it's
Ted.
gonna stay till
We're
I'm
not
gone.
saying, like, no, but you guys, we're not saying you can't have your 4 recreational pot plants, or we're not saying somebody that with medical can't grow what they can legally. We're not saying that at all. We're just saying it's a zoning bylaw for when and if somebody comes in and they want to open up a manufacturer for cannabis or whatever. We want to be able to say that we're going to say yes, but we want them in the right location in town.
And where would that be?
Depends what they're going to do.
Not beside the school, for instance.
We just want, that's all we want.
Is that not
Like-
zoned already?
Technically, it falls under our rural zoning. So basically, when the law allowed cannabis greenhouse production to happen all throughout, and you just need to have a federal license to do it, a greenhouse could locate anywhere in the rural zones. And just the concern is that if it is locating next to any sort of residential premises, due to the security or any concerns for the smell, that the residents nearby could have an opportunity, like how you have today, to sit in a meeting and raise objections that, I'm concerned that this greenhouse is next to my house. What can the developer do, for instance, to take care of the smell, or, to ensure security so that it doesn't impact my residential house. But this is all, again about ensuring that residents who are here in their homes don't have any sort of negative impact from a commercial greenhouse facility. And yes, I mean, in terms of for business, absolutely, we would be willing to open our doors and absolutely work with any commercial greenhouses that want to locate to Schreiber.
But right now, as it sits, you have nowhere where you're ready to zone.
No, it wouldn't be.
You know what I mean? You're ready to prohibit the entire town, but you can't name me a spot where you'd be ready to do it.
It would be in a rural zone, but they would have to just request for the zoning bylaw amendment. And that way it will allow the public to have a meeting, just like this one here. We'd do a public meeting where the developer can present their ideas and the public can weigh in on whether they feel that it's whatever concerns or anything it is that they have.
So if you were to have a neighbor on one side of you that doesn't care, and a neighbor on the other side of you that doesn't care, but you have a neighbor 5 doors down that does. I'm giving you an example.
Yeah, that would all be weighed depending on the example. You
So
know,
then the neighbor that's 5 doors down would trump those that didn't
not
care.
necessarily. It's we'd have to council and all of the time would have to sit together and see what would be the the major economic benefits of such a thing locating here. Again, property taxes and all, versus again the immediate issues. And the main way that we would try to work it out is say, make sure you have a good filtration system, make sure you have adequate security on this development. And if that's the case, then, if you meet these conditions and we're able to make the majority of people happy in the community, then absolutely. But if, most residents and all, if they're nearby it and the development wants to locate next to them and they don't have any concerns, then it's simple for us to allow it right away and give them the zoning exemption to put it in a rural zone.
Because you gotta admit, like, we still have a lot of people that have this reefer madness in the brain, like, and it'll never go away. They'll hold that till the grave. And it just seems to me, you just need a few people, they lodge this complaint, and everything's dead in the water. So I don't understand, why, it's the why are you doing this when you know that council already has the power to zone? Why are you doing it now? Is there some kind of timeline or deadline?
We're doing it now because essentially what happened when they allowed the
This little bugger is not.
the cannabis production, when they allowed this to happen, what it did is it means that currently our zoning bylaw lists greenhouses as an applicable use. So that basically allows anyone to literally purchase any rural land right now in Schreiber and open up a greenhouse and start operating it, and just go ahead. And again, for us, again, what we want to make sure is in such a situation like that, we do want to make sure that residents do have an opportunity to state if, whatever concerns they may have. If this greenhouse facility is located, directly close to their residential homes.
And what are you requiring for security on this home? Like you said, it had to be secure.
This would be, again, something that would be looked at more in a site plan control agreement, but that's pretty standard, whether it's.
Well, I mean, I've heard of people drive their car right through a liquor store brick wall to get their bottle of booze. Like I've heard of that. So brick and mortar is only brick and mortar, right? You've heard of them rip ATMs right out of the wall and they were cemented in.
What's your point, Dennis?
Well, what I'm getting at is, what type of security are you guys going to want from someone who tries to open something up? I mean, you could, to the point where it's almost impossible, We're only Schreiber. We only have, we're ready to close up, they're ready to close up, our post office and bank. We're lucky to hang on to that. Never mind, the everything else. That's how small we are. We can't even have a cab company here because we just don't have the population. They want this much money for insurance, they want that much money, and then when you add it all up, how would a small producer, to try and handle just a small town like this, be able to compete against all of these insurances and
That would be up to them, wouldn't it?
be up to who?
Up to those who want to come in and make a production facility.
That's why you'll never get one. If they want $100,000, you're gonna have to cough up a year
Dennis,
for insurance.
Do you think we are the only community in this country that we are welcoming you? Come in. But we have certain rules. You don't think any other community in this country has their own rules?
But these rules can, like I said, be applied at any time. Why are you pushing for this right now?
The reason we have to put in rules now is because if we don't put the rules and the facility locates anywhere they want to locate, they would have legal non-conforming use to.
But do they not have to get the licenses first?
I thought we
That
had
would be
zoning
federal licenses.
laws already. They're gonna have to meet those requirements in the
Not for
lease.
cannabis.
No.
Not for cannabis though, Brian, that's
For
all.
greenhouse.
that's all-
No,
Nothing,
specifically cannabis.
in terms
Well,
of.
if it's industry and it's production, then we don't have a zoning law for industry.
Yes, we do, but not for cannabis.
Yeah.
Do you understand that this legal just came through?
I
And
understand.
everything changes. It's no different than years ago when they made liquor legal. There was a lot of things, a lot of people didn't agree with it. They didn't want liquor stores in their town. They didn't want bars next door to them. This is no different. We're just trying, welcome to our community. We just want to have the right to say where that facility is going to be built.
Then it shouldn't say prohibit the production, it should say something else for the amendment.
Under planning terms, it just is, the difficulty is, you can't just create a specific zone like that for that use. So with regards to this, we're allowing it again in any rural land.
What's that rural mean?
Rural is any, rural zoning is basically, I don't know how to say this here, but typically it's just in any sort of land that's just outside of the community boundaries. So that's
Well,
a rule.
They can do that already, but you have you wanna prohibit it anywhere in the town limits, right?
Mhm.
That's what that says here, the way I read it. The intent of the zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit the production of cannabis anywhere in Schreiber Township, except by zoning law amendment. So we're
Right.
gonna have to amend an amendment if we want one.
The reason
So
for the
he would
amendment.
build it outside the town limits as it stands regardless.
Yes, the reason why the amendment exists is because it allows anyone who has some sort of opposition or any sort of concern that they can raise it. Doesn't mean that, at the time, everyone's gonna be, like how Dennis, you were saying, one or two people may be, objecting, I absolutely don't like it. That's not the case, again, like we said, we are very much eager for cannabis as an economic opportunity.
And
It
would
just
it
has to
not go in the
be,
industrial
No, right.
zone then, as it stands today, I mean?
no, it would not be able to go in the industrial zone. It would have to be put in as, under a greenhouse, and greenhouses are permitted in the rural zone.
Well, what
Which is
makes you
outside
think
of
it's gonna
town.
be a greenhouse?
Which is outside of town, the rural zone.
I just said that as a generalization, but
No.
it's.
No, we have rural zones within our
Yeah.
municipality.
Oh, well, that's the first thing, he said we were talking about outside the
Could you
limit.
give me one
You'd have
example?
to look at the map.
Could you give me one example of a property that could?
Democracy.
I have a question here. I have a
You
question
would have
here.
to pass, yes.
When you say facility in zoning, what would you consider a facility? Is there a quantity, an amount of plants? Say we have personal of 4. Anything after 4, is that suddenly considered and classified as a facility? Or do you have numbers for that?
For these commercial facilities, these are, again, facilities that are looking to get a federal license to be a grow house, so that's.
So what
again,
is the
we're
number
looking
for that? Anything after 4?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Say you're not doing it for medical purposes and you're doing the 4 for personal, but
Mhm.
suddenly you wanted to do 6 for personal. And you can't do it because now you're considered a facility and it's illegal.
Well, if you were growing 6 or 7 plants, we wouldn't even know, like in your house.
Well, no,
We're not.
For instance, I grow vegetables. I have a
Yeah.
greenhouse.
Yeah.
The growing season up here for Schreiber is not very conducive for growing marijuana outdoors anyway. You'd have to have a greenhouse or it's just, you're not gonna get the plant to go from seedling to full maturity. You just won't have it. So what are you gonna have, people coming on the property and checking to make sure you only have 4?
Absolutely
Again,
not.
That's not-
it worries
that has-
people because they feel there might be a witch hunt.
I absolutely hear that, and
the
it's not a
invasion
witch
of their
hunt.
privacy and.
Exactly.
Sure, the government stipulates 4 plants, but I thought there was also a size, a height. So if you're over at 6 inches higher than the 32 that they allow you, I
Yeah.
mean, is this what we're looking forward to in the future for this
No,
kind of scenario?
This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the municipality. That's a policing issue.
Yep. That
If
would
they
be.
wanna come in and have a look, there's nothing we can do about that.
So
That
anything
is-
after 4 plants essentially is considered a facility then? If you're
We
growing
don't
it
know that.
indoors?
No,
No, not
Wouldn't be
really, not
considered-
really. If you're growing, if you have a medical license and you're growing, I don't know, say the doctor says you get 20 grams, I don't know.
I don't
So
know.
that's another 50 plants. So the police go to your house or whatever, because the town ain't, but the police go to your house and you got 54 plants. And you got a license to have 50 plants, and you can have 4 plants, so you're okay. But if the police go to your house and you got 54 plants, and you haven't got a license, you're 50 over. But we ain't gonna send the police
So I
there.
just
That's not our
curious as
intent.
to what.
That's not, no, so you understand, that's not our intent. When we came on council, our intent was to try and get more things for Schreiber and everything, and that's why we opted in with this. And we want to keep going with it. And it's got nothing to do with your personal growing, like, I've gotten emails and everything from people in Schreiber. It's got, and they've said, oh good, as long as it's got nothing to do with my 4 personal plants, they don't care. And it doesn't got anything to do with the 4 personal plants, and if people got medical issues or whatever, and they got a license, it's got nothing to do with that too. I had cancer, and I did liquid mescaline, I believe it was. I know, believe me, I know that it's gonna help people. And I think everybody around the table knows that. There's no witch hunt here or anything. We want the best for Schreiber and the whole bit. We would love for somebody to come tomorrow and say, we want to build a facility in Schreiber. We're gonna run our tails off to try and get that land.
Then how can you expect that when you amend a bylaw to prohibit the production? How does that send a
Prohibit
welcoming
the
message?
production in non-authorized areas.
Yeah, it doesn't say that though.
So where is
Says
the
anywhere in
authorized
Schreiber.
areas? If you were to have a map, where would you say this would be an authorized area? Like for fun, let's say if I had an idea, maybe I'd want to do it. Could I go to council and say, okay, here's a map of Schreiber, show me. Do you have that? Do you have that now?
In terms of that, what you'd have to do is locate
Where you-
a rural area, and then we would then have a discussion, just like how we have any sort of major development, where we'd be sitting at the table with the planner and going from there. And then part of the development process, you would have to get a zoning amendment to allow the facility to locate there, which will require a public meeting like this. And we'll get comments from the public, and we'll then go from that stage on to the site plan control agreement and all of that henceforward.
So how would the grower have, be able to protect his investment? You know what I mean? If you're sticking it almost completely out of town, who's to watch that? How do you watch that? You
Who's
gotta go
supposed to
home
watch it,
sooner or
Dennis?
later.
Who do you expect to watch it?
Well, I mean, if it's in town and then the alarm goes, everybody hears the alarm, but you stick it out in the boonies.
Then that's got nothing to do with us. It has to be within the parameters of the municipality. Outside the municipality, we have nothing to say about it. We're not trying to control what we can't. And if it's outside our municipality, it's got nothing to do with us. But within the municipality, it would be up to the individual to do their own security. That has nothing to do with us.
If this ordinance were to pass, is there currently an area where it is permitted to be grown?
No, it isn't. There would be no areas where it is permitted to be grown.
Okay, might I suggest that instead of saying production facilities are prohibited in all areas, that you say are welcome in these areas?
Yes, yeah.
That would be what we currently have. It is.
Then what
welcome
is the
in
purpose
rural
of this
zones.
amendment?
The purpose of it is, again, because of the, again, like I said, security or smell concerns that certain people may have if this greenhouse was located near their house, they would have an opportunity to go to a public meeting and raise those concerns.
But you just said that.
We can have it in.
But you just said that there are areas where they can have it.
Right now, they
Can't-
can have it anywhere,
Okay,
and that's what we don't want.
As long as it's zoned rural.
so in someone's backyard, they can put a greenhouse and do it? I've got one shaking head no.
No, it has to be in a rural,
Okay,
Rural area.
so why don't you invite them to those rural areas? And then you're talking about within your municipality, correct?
Find them.
Yeah.
Would a copy of like where rural is in the township limits help?
Yes,
No.
Yeah.
yes,
Like
that would
if
help.
The
You were able to-
verbiage in the bylaw should help.
Everything's zoned like
Yeah.
that.
So what are you
Yeah,
saying?
there's all the zoning
I'm
and all
just saying,
that.
turn your perspective to welcoming them in certain areas instead of, because if that's where they have to go anyway, instead of prohibiting them in all.
No, like,
Yeah.
they are currently welcome in rural zones, and we're essentially putting the prohibition into place just because, again, we want to have control over where it is located in those rural zones.
Okay, you do not have the control within the rural zones of where they locate now?
Nope. Right now, if anyone purchases land in a rural zone, they can build a cannabis production facility anywhere, and we have no control over that.
Then I might suggest you changing within that rural zoning definition something that addresses a cannabis or medical marijuana facility, rather, be positive about it, rather than being negative to everything else. That if it accomplishes the same purpose, I would think that's the way your township might, or your municipality might desire to approach it. And I think from what I've heard from audience participation, that might be something they would be more conducive.
It's, with regard to the wording with prohibition and all, this is again just, it is a planning process and a planning term used for that. It's, like we said, it is just again part of the development process, and anyone who is developing a facility, and if they want to develop a facility, it's not going to put them off of, not developing that facility. We have again business proposals from hydro storage plants and all that are not permitted facilities as it is, and they understand it as part of a zoning process in order to get that development built. So this is again just the whole zoning and all amendment that is put here in place is to have a development process to get these cannabis production facilities from point A to point B, and allowing the public to have their input into that development process.
Okay, so you say that from a planning perspective,
Yeah.
the negative, the prohibition is more commonly used, or is it the only angle used? And if Schreiber were to say, we welcome this development in these areas,
Right.
that would be against the convention of zoning,
Yes, there is.
then I invite you to do that and let Schreiber take the lead,
Right.
either on provincially or nationally, in changing the dialogue as to how zoning is perceived.
Show them the doors open.
Yeah.
We want them here.
So the
Show
way-
us the area that it can go up on.
Yes.
Don't ban it. That's
We're
all the
not-
guy sees when he looks through the prospectus.
We are not banning it.
That's what it says here.
No, it does not say that
It
there.
says prohibiting anywhere in Schreiber. Where is the area that it is?
I think we're just arguing about the semantics of how it's written at this point. now.
Exactly, I understand where you're coming from a planning perspective. I'm saying turn that around and make it positive, go against convention as long as you don't go against any case law or anything else that may harm you in the future, but just put a different spin on it.
Okay,
Just a thought.
thank you very much. Are there any other questions from anybody else on this?
Well, I wanted to know about about zoning. Now, are we talking just about growing, or are we talking about opening up like a store, maybe in Schreiber?
This is production.
This is just with growing. With regards to a store, it's completely different, controlled by the Alcohol and Gaming Corporation. You can get a license. There is absolutely no controls with regard to the town and zoning pertaining to cannabis stores.
And that was a decision that we made as council, that we opted into that idea of having a store in town. We could have opted out and said no stores, but to be progressive and welcome new businesses to Schreiber, we opted in. So
So
that
where
is,
are we with that?
well, someone would have to apply for a license to open a store, first of all. They're granted by the Ontario government, so you would have to apply for a license. And that's where you would start.
Yeah, that license doesn't come from us. That has to come from the government.
Because our MPP, Ford, didn't he say that he was going to open this up?
It is opened up, and they have been granting licenses, like Thunder Bay, I believe, has a couple of licenses, and they just started granting them, so it's a new process, but it doesn't stop anyone from anywhere to apply for a license.
Any other questions, folks? I really thank you for, Nathan, you have something to say?
Just make sure that anyone who did have any comments today, make sure that you are, your name and everything has been properly signed off in that sheet that's being signed off over there. That it records that you were here, and check mark whether you want me to follow up or not with regards to the passage of this bylaw. So do make sure you do that.
So would you be able to do that for us, as, take the map of Schreiber and say, we might consider it here, 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 and here?
In reality, its consideration is only gonna be in the rural zone, because the rural zone was planned to have greenhouses in it.
But I don't understand where this rural zone is.
There's a map.
None of us,
The
There's a
boundary,
map.
is it past White Sands?
No,
No.
It's within our
Just
community.
in town?
It's
within
in
town.
our community. It's land, in terms of land uses and zoning, what happens is, for instance, with regards to zoning, typically all the houses you see here and all, those are zoned residential. And with that, there's a whole list of rules with how you can use that land for residential uses. Commercial is another.
There,
is
because
another
you
zone.
tend to be able to just amend the bylaw whenever you feel like it. Like, I know one piece of property, they did that to in about 3 weeks ago. You just, and you step all over people. You just don't care.
What's that?
But,
People buy property and they figure they're protected by the bylaw, and they turn around and amend the bylaw and screw you. That's the Township of Schreiber, it says.
I'm sorry, I don't.
And
know
you
what you're
must
talking
remember
about
what
there.
I'm talking about too.
No, I don't. to be
You know,
honest
but
with
I'm talking about that garage that they're being built across town. That big garage on private property.
you. And that was a public meeting?
That
That
was-
people were
Yeah,
welcome
my
to?
wife was here talking about it at a public meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and her concerns
And what,
were
look what you
addressed?
did, yeah. Bylaws mean nothing, because you people just amend them whenever you please, it's to suit any of your friends. That's just how you guys operate. And the Township of Schreiber has been operating that way for 50 or 60 years or more, maybe. And that's why they're down in the hole right now, because they have people like you sitting on council.
Pardon me?
Is there non-municipal rural land currently abutting any municipal residential property?
No. There is a map that you are more than welcome to have access to that will answer all those questions of where the zoning, where the rural areas are.
Okay, the reason I was asking that question is if there were rural land abutting, or, if there were non-municipally located rural land abutting municipally located residential properties, this bylaw would not do anything to protect those residents.
so if I'm understanding your question, you're saying if there was that rural land abutting a residential zone, so rural land and residential land
Yeah,
touching
rural,
together.
non-municipal, abutting residential municipal land.
Rural non-municipal
not us then.
is not us.
That'd be an
My
unorganized.
point, exactly. How do you protect the residents who have that situation? That should also be a consideration, I would think.
You're saying residents who would be located on like the border of the municipality?
Yeah, exactly. if the rural land on the other side of their property line is not in the municipality of Schreiber.
That would be, that's not our jurisdiction.
I know it's not your jurisdiction, but it's your desire via this ordinance to protect those from whatever noxious or other negative benefits a facility would bring into the community from that situation. If the rural land's in Schreiber, you might not want them to locate there because of whatever reason. But if the rural land is just on the other side of that same group of residents, and I'm just suggesting that I don't know if there's a vehicle, but there may be a vehicle where you can protect them, whether it's in a rural piece of land, a rurally zoned piece of land in Schreiber, or a piece of land that Schreiber does not govern. It may or may not be applicable. That was the reason I asked the question, if there even was such a situation. Because I understand your intent. I don't necessarily agree with planning and zoning language all the time. But if it's your intent to protect your residents from any negative side effects, you should want to protect them whether or not the facility is going up on municipally owned rural zoned land, not municipally owned, rural zoned land within your municipality, or any other lands that may allow for that same negative impact that's just outside your municipal boundaries.
I think I understand what you're trying to say, and an example of that would be probably Walker Lake is within the municipality, and just beyond that, there's the Hungry Moose property, which is in unorganized territory, right? So that's an example. So other than that,
What about the 12 lots that need to be surveyed, which are on top of the beach road?
yeah, that's within the municipality, and I'm not sure how that's zoned. That's zoned rural or I think it's seasonal cottage possibly.
I think so.
Yeah.
You'd have to, it's seasonal, but still, like, is that considered rural?
No, no.
Or, you know, where you are now?
Yeah, it used to be rural, and it was changed to seasonal cottage.
Yeah.
Western Tire. Western Tire.
Let's check the siren thing.
Yeah.
Got that. But we can't,
Because it's right in town.
and it's not zoned industrial.
So this has made its way around, and the mayor will call for anyone to make any more, verbal statements. So do make sure that you do put your hand up for a verbal statement, and if we did make a verbal statement, that you are properly recorded on
Yeah.
the sign sheet.
So we're rural, that's more to behind where Teddy is. Teddy's down here, so. You know anything south of that?
Some of it's crown, it's crown.
Some of it's crown, yeah. So we're just looking at a map, and some of the rural lands would be where you are, Teddy, beyond, further to the south, southeast.
Yeah.
We're looking at the map, and it shows as rural land.
Well, I thought about it, but it's just too much crap for me to get involved in at my age, so.
Yeah, no, but that's an example where there
Yeah.
is rural land, so. I'm just looking at the map. It's on the, it's in, within the zoning bylaw. There is a map attached to it showing all the classifications of land, so, I mean, you could come to the office tomorrow or you could go on the website and take a look at it. The town website, you'll find it there.
And is that what it was gonna say on the final amendment? That rural municipal is available? Or is it just gonna say prohibited in the Township of Schreiber?
That's pretty much
That's
what
where
we
the
need.
problem is.
Yeah.
It encompasses the town limits. And yet you say there are areas that may be available, but none of them are defined. So when it gets signed, it's, if that's the wording, we're left out in the cold again.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea here is to hear everybody's ideas, and then, I mean, it's up to us to make the decision one way or the other, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it.
If it's zoned rural, whether it's within the municipality or not, rural is rural.
We're not talking about
So
that.
why wouldn't it work?
No,
Right.
we're only concerned with rural within our municipality.
Yeah,
We have
right.
no say.
Well, that's what I'm
happens
saying.
outside the
Do
municipality.
you- So you just think the wording of it will dissuade people from wanting to build a facility in
Well,
Schreiber?
the way I read it is,
Yeah.
there's no way it can go anywhere in the town limits of Schreiber, period.
Yeah.
That's the way it reads.
But I think anyone serious that is going to build a large production greenhouse facility will understand the way the zoning is, because it's a large production, right? So I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
know what they
that
are.
corporation or whoever it is will go through the process of zoning, and that sort of concern will be addressed immediately, right?
Well,
Like
if I was one of those guys and I was reading that amendment to the bylaw, I'd go take Schreiber off the list, we're banned, we can't put it
You
in
wouldn't
town.
call the township to ask if you could do it?
Not when I can go to one that doesn't have a double amendment, yeah.
Okay.
You know, it only makes sense to go to the guy who's not picking on, seems to be picking on me.
Okay.
Well,
You know, like if you had a zoned area
In all
and stated
fairness,
that,
Brian, we
yeah,
don't
you'd be
know.
in the running.
No, I know.
we don't know what other townships have for their bylaws. We don't know that.
I know, but.
Maybe they're more
that's why you
restrictive
should be
than we
saying
are.
Which areas are available for this, not in the limits it's banned. You know, we realize we don't want it downtown, right beside the school, right beside the rich guy's house. Yeah, we understand that. But that's not what that says. It says it's banned anywhere in the town limits. Everybody knows you can build on crown land, you gotta go to some other government for that. But, you know, if we want it within the town to get tax money out of it, like down by Ted's place or something, that should be defined in the proposal, because the way it reads, it's prohibited. In my
Okay,
mind.
appreciate it. Well, yeah, then there are others who don't read it that way, so.
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard yet.
Are there any other questions? I really appreciate the turnout tonight, I really do. This is good stuff. This is why we have these public meetings. We're gonna take all this stuff into consideration. And we're not gonna make any moves until we know that we're gonna be doing the right stuff. And that's what it's all about. And we wanna welcome people, businesses to this community. We just wanna make sure that we're doing it right. And that somewhere down the road, we didn't make a mistake, which could happen anyway because we're only human.
We're all here for the same reason.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Brian, I know you are. Dennis, Ted, I
have one more
understand that.
question. So if you form this bylaw, can you change it?
Yes, council,
Yes.
council can always change.
Yes,
So it can be changed?
because we've made mistakes in the past, and we've had to change because there was a mistake. We're not beyond, admitting mistakes and trying to fix them. Okay? So what do we do now?
We have to continue the script.
Okay, the public meeting regarding consideration of the proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 20-2014 as amended in the Township of Schreiber is now adjourned. Council will consider all the matters placed before it before coming to a decision. Thank you very much again, folks. We appreciate your input.
Well, I just want to know, where would it be okay?
Can I grab you aside?
Sure.
All right. So at this point in time, I guess we will reconvene council. And We will start off with delegations from
So if somehow.
our fire chief.
Jan's here.
Jan's on
Yes,
there.
have to do this out of school.
Jan,
Now you
you're
need
up.
special amendments to the bylaw to allow you to buy a school. Because there's fire effects. You can't have a bar here. That's exactly what it's saying for this grow place. So I'm pretty sure they have rules about that if they want to do the bars.
All right, props, yes. Are we all set?
Sure we are.
Okay.
I'm just gonna move the camera a bit, Jen, so I can get you in if you wanna be in or not.
I think I'm on the agenda as actually budget, but this is specifically because I was asked to talk about the SCBA equipment listed in the capital budget. So, as you can clearly see, I've brought a few props. So, I'm not sure if anybody's really interested in looking at these, but at a minimum, I'm going to ask you all at some point to pick them up.
Sure.
Sure, pass that around. That is one of Schreiber's SCBA tanks. That one was built in 1976, and it's what we currently use here in town. And then, I'm going to pass around this tank from 2014 that belongs to the Township of Terrace Bay.
Where you guys gonna sit?
And there is a bit of a weight difference there,
What is this weight?
21 pounds.
And then
This other one, Jan, how much is that?
That other one weighs 11 pounds.
and it takes more air?
And there's
Hold more
a
air.
pressure difference. So just to give you a little bit of the history of SCBAs, when these things first came out after World War II, there was a horrendously heavy steel tank that came with them. They operated at 1800 PSI, and the tank probably then weighed 35 pounds. In the mid-60s, they came out with these aluminum tanks at 21. Everybody thought they were the greatest things ever. The pressure in them increased up to 2216. And that's where Schreiber is at today. So yes, there is a pressure difference. This Terrace Bay tank operates at 4,500 PSI. The cubic feet of air in this tank will last you 20 minutes once you put it on and start using it, as an average. It varies a little based on respiration rate and how deep you breathe. This has 60 minutes of air in it.
How long?
60. This is a 60-minute tank. 3 times the amount.
How long has Terrace Bay had those?
Terrace Bay bought those in 2014. So just to let you know where we're at, since you asked,
How many of those do you have?
we've got 60 of these.
60?
60.
Wow.
That's not just that 60 bottles, that's not 60 air packs. Just the bottles, because if you change the bottles, you keep wearing the pack, the bottle slides into it.
Yeah.
So there are 60 cylinders or bottles.
How many in service type of thing?
Well, air packs in service, we keep 14 on the frontline trucks right now.
Yeah,
We've got another 10 in reserve
right.
that we use if something breaks, if people have to go away for training and the college says you have to bring an SCBA with you, well, then we put some more into service.
Yeah.
Bottles fit the same pack?
They do not. We are with Scott Aviation, or Scott Health and Safety, which makes the Scott pack, which is the air pack we've always used throughout the years. And Terrace Bay has moved to a company called Avon Health and Safety, which is a completely different model of pack. Now, I'm recommending that we always stick with the Scott because we've got masks, we've got fit testing, we've got the 24 packs already, and I'm not suggesting we actually move away from Scott at all. But just to finish up with that, Marathon moved to the 4,500 PSI system in 2000. Nipigon moved to the 4,500 PSI system in 2005. Terrace Bay did it in 2014. And Manitouwadge is currently the only other town I could find that is still using the 2216s. But they are saving up reserve funds to make a bulk purchase in the near future. So that's based on giving them all a phone call.
Jan,
yeah.
how much is one bottle?
One bottle,
The new style.
the new stuff, at the high end, one bottle is $1,300. So,
Is that,
Plus a new face mask and everything.
No.
No?
no. No, the
will
face,
Scott make the new style?
Scott does,
You-
yeah.
You'd stick with Scott.
I would stick with Scott, so we're not changing packs and masks and hoods and things like
And that
that.
would be their price?
That is their price, based on, I gave some of their dealers a call. There are other companies that make the cylinders too. And we're looking at pricing with them right now. I think what I'm suggesting is that we only buy 4 bottles a year in the future. These bottles have a life expectancy of anywhere from 15 to 30 years, based on we have 60 bottles right now that need replacing. And if we buy 4 per year, every year into the future, by the time they reach the end of their life expectancy, the first 4, we'd be back again. We'd be at our 60 and we'd be rolling over the ones that were
But
going
if
out
you
the
went
door.
with a different supplier other than Scott, would you need an adapter for your packs?
Yes, I'm not aware of any adapters. Scott uses a fairly proprietary system, as do most companies nowadays. You'll see there is a neck bracket here
Right.
that locks into a bracket at the bottom of the pack, and you cannot currently get that on anybody else's bottle. So, no, there really isn't an adapter out there.
So if you were to replace those, it would be identical to that?
What it would be, because this bottle is made by a company in California called Luxfer, actually. All they do is they make cylinders, fire extinguisher cylinders, oxygen tanks, SCBA tanks. This is carbon fiber. They make them all identical. They will put whatever name you want on it, you know, as long as you're paying the bills, and they'll put whatever valve assembly and hanging brackets you want on the things. So, the reality is, Luxfer made that one, Luxfer made this one. Many years apart, but they're the largest tank manufacturer out there.
That's the reason for the difference in weight?
Well, this is solid aluminum, and this is carbon fiber.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, and the other difference is, like you're saying, is the pressure difference. 2,200 in there, 4,500 in here. So this has double the cubic feet of compressed air in it.
Right.
So that's the big difference there. So just a few other dates that I should point out are fairly important when discussing this is back in 2008 in the U.S., the National Fire Prevention Association decided that hazmat operations and hazmat level 2 was going to become part of the firefighter's job description. In 2008, later on, the Fire College also adopted that. And they put out a memo saying that anybody coming down to the Fire College now must bring their own air pack and 2 cylinders with them, rated at 60 minutes. Right now we can't do that because clearly we don't own any, but we are using loaners right now. The other thing that happened, and you may have seen it on the budget when we were talking about the face masks, was part of the PPE in the budget lines. We've been buying 4 masks a year because back in 2013 there was a large standard change as far as how the masks were manufactured. Our previous masks were rated to start melting on your face at about 200 degrees. The current ones that we're buying now are rated to not melt until they hit just over 500 degrees. So what we've been doing is, out of operating funds, we've been buying 4 masks per year for the last 3 years. So we're about 50% changed over to the new masks now. And that'd be another reason why I would say, we're not interested in changing packs from Scott. We're just interested in going from 2,200 to 4,500 on our systems. So. And then in 2014, of course, the Fire College went all in and adopted all the NFPA training standards as the firefighter qualifications in Ontario. So that's a summary of the large changes there. Just want to touch in on our air compressor system, because it's the other major component of this, is the way to fill it. There's 4 major components to it. There's a compressor, which you may have seen listed in next year's capital. That was probably a sticker shock. The compressors are not cheap. I checked today, a used one will run us today 21,000 Canadian. And that's for a bottom model. A top of the line reconditioned is 38,000. So that's, there's no way to sugarcoat that one. That's the cost of the compressors. The good news is, the other 2 parts, one of them's the storage tanks, the Cascade system that we run. Our current Cascade system is rated at 2,400 PSI. So it's kind of our weakest link. The tanks are fairly old. They're from the 70s as well, same age as these. I'm suggesting that we replace those tanks this year and use the MTO funding off the highway this year to bring those in, bring in a set of 4,500 Cascade tanks. The final piece of that system is what they call the fill station, and it is a safety device that we slide these bottles into before they're filled. These bottles, not commonly, but are known to rupture when they're being filled and explode. What happens is they will crack after many years of use, in the necks especially, and they will rupture. And of course, you've probably all seen a tire rupture at 80 PSI. When this ruptures at 22 or 4,000 PSI, you don't want to be anywhere near it. So what the fill station does is it's a large steel enclosure that the tank slides into. It's closed up and locked, and it holds the tank that's being filled. The good news is, when we bought that in 2005, it is rated for 4,500 PSI. The only thing it requires for the changeover is about $200 worth of miscellaneous parts for hoses. So that is our second part of the change. What we've put in there in the budget request is to do the Cascade tanks this year and the fill station parts, and then look at the compressor in the future, into the next year. And I do believe there was also a question posed to me about going jointly with Terrace Bay. Currently, Terrace Bay does not have a compressor system either. We were previously, before 2014, filling their systems when they were on 2216 as well. They now have to ship all their cylinders down to Marathon and have them filled there. So there may be some interest there in going jointly on a compressor system and simply putting it in place where the current one is.
With Terrace Bay.
Doing it jointly with them. Yeah. All right. Any questions? That's all I really have on this.
Any questions for the chief?
What's being ordered or reordered, like, on an annual basis again, you know?
Okay, operating wise or year to year, it would be 4 cylinders.
Right.
Now, every few years, capital wise, some of those air packs that we're using now, the backpack portion of it,
Right.
they will need to be replaced occasionally.
Yeah.
But we've been getting 20
Are
years.
you talking these carbon units now?
Well, so we would be buying 4 of these carbon units
Right.
every year on a continual basis.
And that'll go in the same pack as that one, for instance?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you foresee the OFM deciding that these are no longer viable and that you must go to the carbon fiber 4500s?
I don't think they're going to, well, there is two schools of thought on that. One is, like I said, when the first SCBs came out, they were 1800 PSI.
Right.
Then in the late 50s, they were 2000 PSI. Then these came out in the 60s at 2200. I couldn't go out and buy an 1800 PSI bottle or a 2000 PSI bottle now because they're all discontinued. As far as the 2200s go, there's only one aluminum tank left out there being manufactured. So I don't expect these to stay around very much longer, actually. What we've been doing for the last few years, because like I say, every once in a while, these bottles have to go in for a static test. Some of them will fail. They'll put a camera in there, they'll find a crack, and they'll say, okay, that tank's done. They cut it, they take the valve off, they'll give you the valve, but the tank goes to the garbage. We've actually got a pile of used tanks from other fire departments. We've got piles of them from Shunya, from Sioux Narrows, where we've just got the tanks off them as they were going to the dump. And what we'll do is when one fails, we'll put the next one into service.
Well, these carb units then, they're quite different. Does that mean possibly that you don't need as many of those as you do of those? Because of the capacity or the pressure or whatever?
There's a minimum that we would require. Like I say, there's the 14 on the truck. So you've got to have 14 right there.
Yeah.
And you want to have a spare bottle for when they come out and you have to change the bottle. So could we get away with a few less? We could possibly go down to 45 or 50, I think.
Yeah.
But if you started buying them, you're gonna know that
But,
you'll
yes.
know that by the time you get there.
Yeah, exactly. It'll vary on everybody's uses and how many.
Yeah, exactly.
How long an incident lasts for. You know, a short house fire, you may not go through a bottle. You may use half a bottle. But
This here unit, for instance, has longer capacity than that one.
yes, that's a 60-minute. That's a 20-minute.
3 times?
3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but again, you know, if we were to go out to a train wreck and we were there all day, we'd be going through a lot of bottles.
Sure.
So, yeah. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
Yeah.
Resolution number 52-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that the minutes of the council and committee of the whole meeting held February 11th, 2020 be accepted as circulated. All in favor? Thank you. Resolution number 53-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council accept the report from the CAO clerk with respect to additional services request number 5 from number 10 Architectural Group for the Schreiber Discovery Center and approve the cost of $900 excluding applicable taxes as per the attached agreement. All in favor? Resolution number 54-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Stafuric. The council accept the report from the CAO clerk with respect to change order number 9 from number 10 Architectural Group for the Schreiber Discovery Center to increase the contract price in the amount of $20,836.20, excluding applicable taxes as per the attached agreement. All in favor? Resolution number 55-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that council accept the report from the CAO clerk with respect to the Hydro One Service Connect for the Schreiber Discovery Center and approve the cost of $10,297.69, excluding applicable taxes. All those in favor? Thank you. Resolution number 56-20, moved by Councillor Mullins, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that council accept the quotation from Nesbitt Contracting in the amount of $1,260, excluding applicable taxes, for the mounting of 6 12-foot by 8-foot murals in the gymnasium of the Schreiber Municipal Complex. All in favor? Thank you. Resolution number 57-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that council approve the Recreation Department's plan for the Winter Carnival 2020 event scheduled to take place February 18th, 2020 to February 23rd, 2020. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Resolution number 58-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council authorize a donation of 3-month individual weight room registration to the Corporate Pictionary Last Chance Draw in the amount of $87, and 55 cents, excluding applicable taxes. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Resolution number 59-20, moved by Councillor Mullins, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council approve the creation of a senior skate program. All those in favor? Carried. Resolution number 60-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that council approve the purchase of a Paragon professional cotton candy machine with roll-top bubble from the North Shore Harvest Cupboard in the amount of $650, excluding applicable taxes, and that the purchase be funded through the Schreiber Youth Committee surplus revenue. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Resolution number 61-20, moved by Councillor Mullins, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council authorize the CAO clerk or the recreation programmer to sign the live performance contract with the Sensational Hot Rods. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Is that by, for instance, in conjunction with Terrace Bay, that particular one?
No.
No?
That's just a performance they're going to put on here in June.
Okay.
Just a concert. Sounds like the drag racing thing, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Hot rods.
Resolution number 62-20, you never thought about that. Moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council approve the plan for the volunteer appreciation event scheduled to take place February 26, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Community Hall. All in favor? Carried, thank you.
That's tomorrow night?
Yes. Please, all volunteers or those who might want to volunteer, come out and join us. Resolution number 63-20. Moved by Councillor Stefurek, seconded by Councillor Morrow. The council approved the plan for the local business meet and greet event scheduled to take place February 27th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Schreiber Municipal Complex. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And there again, for all businesses, please come out and join us on Thursday evening. Resolution number 64-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor McGrath. That council approve the attendance of all members of council at the NOMA conference and annual general meeting to be held April 29th, 2020 to May 1st, 2020 in Fort Francis, and that expenses be paid as per township policy. All those in favor? Carried. Resolution number 65-20, moved by Councillor Stefurek, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that the North Shore Harvest Cupboard be approved for a grant in aid in the amount of $645.90 for the use of the Recreation Hall on May 9th, 2020. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. That's it? That's it?
There's no resolution for it yet. Council things.
Oh. Okay, so now we will move into the 2020 council appointments. Councillor Morrow, would you be willing to take over Councillor Krause's
Oh, yeah.
with the library and the youth committee?
Yep, that's fine.
And the fire department, would somebody be interested? Doug?
I would.
Would you like to sit on the fire department?
Yeah.
Okay.
Additionally, we'd be creating an accessibility committee, so we'd need 2 councillors.
Yes, we have to create an accessibility committee. Who would like to sit on that? I'll need 2 councillors.
I will if you want.
Dave?
I guess I could.
Doug?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Morrow, Councillor Stefurek? Is everyone else okay with their current assignments?
I think I'm good for another year.
Okay. Louis?
Yeah.
It shows Kevin with the cemetery. I don't know if you want more than 1 counselor on there or not.
Well, we're gonna go through that later, right?
Yep.
Oh,
The cemetery committee? Yeah.
Well, on this agenda.
On this agenda.
Oh, it's not this on this agenda.
We're
okay.
gonna be working on the new terms of reference and everything for that.
Yeah, once we get that sorted out. Is everybody fine with that then?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Good thing I got you here. Resolution number 66-20. Moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Mullins. That bylaw 12-2020, being a bylaw to amend the council life events recognition policy bylaw 42-2008, and to rescind bylaw 5-2009, be given first, second, third, and final reading and enacted. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Resolution number 67-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that bylaw 13-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the Township of Schreiber to enter into an agreement with Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada, FEDNOR, to amend the Township of Schreiber and FEDNOR Contribution Agreement Bylaw 39-2019, be given first, second, third, and final reading and enacted. All in favor? Carried, thank you.
Obviously, there was a benefit with that agreement.
Resolution number 68-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that bylaw 14-2020, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend zoning bylaw number 20-2014 as amended of the Corporation of the Township of Schreiber with respect to Canada Bill C-45, an act respecting cannabis, be given first, second, third, and final reading and enacted.
Jen, because of what went on here tonight, is that something we can reconsider?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
What
sure.
we can have is get the planner to, again, respond to anything that may have been brought up and get him to follow up with regards to that, and we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting to.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
it's
That's the best way to go about it, for sure. I've brought up some good points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deferred to March 11th.
See where we go.
So when is deferred then?
March.
Maybe we could include a map of, or in the meantime, we should do some research on exactly where the rural areas are in our community.
Yeah.
Deferred?
Deferred.
Deferred,
sign
yeah. Resolution number 69-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Stafuric. The council authorized a donation of a sweatshirt and toque to the Schreiber Back North Annual Charity Poker Run in the amount of $55.95, excluding applicable taxes. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings to a close our council portion of the meeting. We'll go into committee of the whole. And we'll begin with the CAO clerk report on LNG payments.
The recommendation here is that the council, the Township of Schreiber, authorize the payment of $20,000 towards the $100,000 in funding to the town of Marathon in contribution to the LNG project, based on the evidence provided to satisfy the conditions of Resolution 8218. So, again, as pointed out in my report, there are various, due diligence conditions that were put in at the time for this. So the main thing is you do want to check, I know I put in my recommendation that it does generally satisfy. Again, in terms for construction of the Nipigon LNG, everything is planned to go ahead. That being said, shovels are not yet in the ground. It is currently at the tender stage from my last conversation with Northeast Midstream. They're planning to get this done in April. With regards to the other communities, from the proof I've seen, they have so far contributed $20,000 each. I cannot speak for Marathon, they haven't really shown that, but you know, it's understood that they likely would have contributed still to this, so it depends on, in general, how strict council wants to be with regards to that resolution. But for the sake of meeting those components, I did provide whatever evidence I could to show of whether it meets, because Marathon is inquiring when we will pay that invoice.
So what's your recommendation, that we go ahead with the $20,000?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation based on the evidence I've seen, just whether all of council agrees that it does meet that.
Is that part of the 100,000 or what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, and where do the other municipalities stand in regards to that? Or
They've
do
so
we
far-
know?
They've so far paid 20,000 out of the 100,000.
Each of the 5?
Yeah.
So we're,
Yeah.
We're the only one left.
okay. Sounds good.
How's everybody feel?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
As recommended, we will move ahead with the $20,000 payment.
Pretty tough in 2018 with your
Next up is the council expense and remuneration report. Any questions on that? I was going to say the same. Any questions? Alrighty, then we'll move on to transfers to reserves. Any recommendation? All recommendations are before us. Any questions on that?
Straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Okay.
Can I ask one question about that?
Sure.
The council transferred to the fire truck reserve $10,000 as budgeted, et cetera, and how often does that kind of payment occur? To the fire truck reserve?
It's an annual budget. It's an annual.
That's annual, Marlene?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up is the Schreiber. I got other things on my mind here.
Yeah.
The Schreiber Public Library Board meeting minutes. Discussing, excuse me for a minute.
Yeah, a good man. Yeah, a good man.
Who's that?
We have high hopes.
I know the routine.
That's good.
Usually good snacks.
This Rossport Library, Dan.
Where's that exactly?
That's in this, under the Schreiber Public Library.
Which minutes, December or January?
Oh, what have I got here? This would be the first.
December?
Yes. Correspondence.
Rossport 3-1 or 3.1, Rossport user agreement?
Yeah. The Rossport Library user agreement is under review.
I think that just means residents of Rossport can use the Schreiber Library.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the only change for 2020 was that if so it was $289 a year that Rocksport paid the Township of Schreiber, and they're splitting that amount for 2020 between Terrace Bay and Schreiber.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So that's all it is.
That is not a good deal.
A good day.
Okay, sure, everybody fine with that? So that moves us to the question period. Are there any questions this evening? Okay, hearing none, we will move into communications. And number three. Oops. Nathan, you wanna give us an update on that?
Oh, this was a request for a meeting and follow-up with council. Of course, the matters have been brought forward again for before the council, right, in the delegation and have proceeded this, so. In terms of the matters that are being brought forward again, it's matters pertaining to, again, the zoning and the trailers, which, again, were covered from the last court order, so.
These requests have been going on for quite a while, and it just seems to.
It's never ending.
It's never ending, and it has been dealt with in court. I don't know why we are still trying to deal with it, because in my mind, there's nothing left to deal with. I would like council's opinion on what we'd like to do is send out a letter saying that we have exhausted all avenues. We have spent a lot of money on legal fees that we don't feel we should have even have to spend, but we did anyway. And we'd like your input on this as to whether we should ask the clerk to send out a letter to try and put an end to this. Any questions on that?
No, I think we gotta go ahead and put an end to it. It's gone on far too long, and we've got, Nathan's got a lot of other things that he can be working on here and everything like that. And it's just gone on far too long. I think they know what they have to do. And, yeah, they gotta get on with it, and we gotta get on with our stuff, so that's my opinion.
I think the amount of money we're spending on a monthly basis is probably unfair to the taxpayers of the Schreiber.
I agree.
Dan?
Move on.
Okay, so we can ask the clerk to send out a letter in that regard?
Will do.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else on communications we'd like to talk about?
No, actually, I'm good.
move to unfinished business, the capital works preliminary budget.
One jumps out at me.
Mm-hmm.
The roof. You've been patching that roof?
We've been patching the roof frequently.
Yeah, so.
It's been okay for a couple of years since we've done the last few patches. Just getting a price just so you
Yeah.
know where it's at.
So you figure we're
If
good
it ever
for,
comes into play that we have to get on it, we'll have a number.
is that something we've been budgeting for a new roof? No. Not at all.
Repairs, that's about it.
Yeah. So you figure we're good for at least a couple of years?
I hope so.
Get out of the term.
Is that what you're saying?
So is it
November 2022.
extremely big number?
This is
Yeah,
just a budget figure, right?
Sorry.
It's a wish, it's a wish.
A wish list.
Wish
Yeah.
list,
So the arena heat, is that just for those rooms, Fred?
Yes.
So is the heat in the actual rink fixed? Is it working properly? It's been cold in there.
Well, it's working as it should, but I don't think they gave us quite what we're expecting.
Okay.
It's a little,
Okay. Do we know what it would cost to give it what you were expecting? Does that make sense?
No, I don't have the price on it.
Okay.
But what, and wastewater also jumped out at me. What, there's a figure there of $1.4 million, that's, what exactly does that mean?
It's part of the dechlorination
Okay.
project that we need.
So-
That bigger number you see at the side is the portion of funding that we're trying to leverage through a grant.
Right.
And this is through the ICIP Green Stream funding. It's again just provincial regulations. And we have to essentially figure out a way how we're gonna be dechlorinating this water during the summer months. And UV seems to be the engineering report's solution, and that's where that number comes from. It would be our portion of money paid towards that upgrade.
Right.
You mean the 310? Right.
Yep.
If you get the grant.
If we get the grant, that's with the grant, it's so
That's-
expensive.
So our portion is 310,
Mhm.
and the grant money would cover the rest
Yep.
if we get the grant.
Yep.
And if we don't get the grant, we still
Then
have to go
we'll-
ahead with it?
We'll have to start looking at Plan B. Yes, we will have to go ahead with it.
What's the timeline on that?
Timeline is essentially by April next year, right, Fred? Is that what you said, April next year, right?
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you.
What is this, Kevin?
It's about April next year, I believe.
Okay.
It's essentially, we'd have to start.
Start
we-
in April.
Yeah, we start doing the dechlor in April, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just in a 10-year contract.
That becomes a place where you can use.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, whenever there's, new regulation standards that need to be met, we have to figure out how we're gonna meet those standards and then what the cost is gonna be
Right.
to do that, so. The Plan B would likely be looking at call it, some sort of sulfur dioxide chemical that's used to take out all of the chlorine. But
Right.
again, that would be very expensive if we have to do that in the long run, as opposed to one capital cost
Right.
spending for the UV. Just getting chemicals, and these are, dangerous chemicals, so we'd have to keep on getting it every year, putting that into the water, right, to take out the chlorine.
When are you supposed to hear back on that grant?
By April this year, by the end of
April this
April. Yep,
Well, just,
to cross our fingers.
yeah, hope for the best.
Arlene, how would this bottom line number compare with a year ago? Roughly.
Well, a year ago, it was in excess of 4 million, I think, in expenses, because we had we had two really large projects that we did, because all this is showing you is the expense portion, it's not showing you any kind of revenue streams that are gonna cover anything.
Right.
So your normal, capital will have both revenue and expense, and then the net effect to the tax base would be at the bottom.
Right. So this is close to $2 million.
Mhm. This is a wish list.
Yeah,
Like, you're not gonna
yeah.
be able to do everything
So there
that's
was-
on here.
You're telling me last year there was a $4 million wish list? Is that what you said?
But the
Well, because you
government
did the
paid for lots of
Clearwell
that.
project, you had the Clearwell project that's gone over a couple of years now.
Yeah, yeah.
And the total cost of that project was over
Okay.
4.6 million, right?
Everything up on the mountain there.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I think one thing that we really gotta look at and have some good dialogue on is that cottage lot survey. Cause I think it could be
Is it on here?
yeah, it's a very actually under development and planning. I think we gotta have some good dialogue on that, cause I mean, it is what it is, but it's also, I think it's gonna bring you in some revenue.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
When the time comes.
Yeah, I think we should take a good look around there in the spring again, or another look around. Do some boots on the ground, looking around and see what the potential is there.
The next question we have to answer, and Red was looking into it, is again, whether we need a proper plan of subdivision or a plan of reference, and I'll have to touch base again with our planner to find out what exactly it is that we would need for that, so. And depending on that, that may adjust that cost, you know, the $33,000 you see there.
Right.
So you're telling me there's such a thing as a seasonal subdivision? That doesn't make sense.
It's just, for, how we're gonna be identifying those lots, but
Yeah.
yeah. I don't really know until I talk to the planner to find out what exactly we need to
Yeah.
delineate those separate properties, so.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case, I don't know.
His original idea was to run all those properties off the road, which is simple, it's a simple way to
Yeah.
do it. But by looking at it, when we went for a ride, it's not that simple, it's
Well, they are all
off the road, it's just providing, I mean, it's just.
The access.
The access is.
There's 160 feet frontage on each lot on
Yeah.
the beach road.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have to relook at that, like Kevin was saying.
Yeah, we definitely have to revisit that.
Yeah.
To try and move forward with it in any way we can. I have a question on the Blue Park stipulation. It says 14,000 to.
Yeah,
Is that?
that's for the whole structure. Some of it can be replaced or replace the whole structure, and then do we need it if we're fixing up downtown with a big.
Oh, I see, okay. Okay, thanks, Red. Any other questions then on that preliminary budget?
Wish list.
Yeah. For sure.
Just can't hear you, Marley.
Be nice to be able to do a lot of it.
Marlene's hand is up.
Yes, Marty.
I just, if anybody didn't have any questions anywhere, I just wanted to, we had discussed planning a budget meeting
Yes.
for next week, if I could just send an email out to everybody to see what their availability is. That would be good.
Well, in order to have Councillor Morrow here, we'd have to schedule it at night
Or after 3.
or after 3.
Yeah.
Would you like to do it in the afternoon, say
No,
4
I don't
o'clock?
care, that's fine. 3's fine, 4's fine.
3 o'clock is all right with you? If we got it out of the way in the afternoon?
Okay, so we'll take a look at what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll send you some dates out then.
Okay. I mean, any day with me next week is,
I'm good
So far,
except,
so good.
we got a thing from Patty today, right?
Yes, that is.
9:30 in the morning?
Some more.
Okay.
That's on the 4th, so next.
That's 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay, 9:30 in the morning, okay.
Okay, if you could look up a couple of dates, Marlene, and get back to us.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to, you know, move
Yeah.
this process along as quickly as we can.
Yeah, you got an email on
Possibly
it
a landfill meeting too next week.
Nathan.
Yeah.
Should be in your
Possibly a
email.
landfill meeting
Oh,
too next week.
when did you get that?
This morning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, are there any other questions or any other business? Then, I guess, resolution number 70-20, moved by Councilor McGrath, seconded by Councilor Mullins, that the meeting now adjourned at 8:55 PM. All those in favor? Carried, thank you.